Thank you, Brendan, for that introduction. Yeah, he was close. So my degree is in occupational ministries, not quite Christian ministries, but close enough. They all get confusing. For half my first 2 years, I didn't know what my ministry was or what my degree was, if I'm being completely honest. As you see here, this is the title of my sermon. We will be going through John 11. If you have a Bible from under your seat, it is page 897 and on. You'll see as we go, you guys can follow along. I won't go quite strictly with the verses. I'll kind of just guide you through it as we go. The TV show Outer Banks is a pretty popular television show on Netflix that I started. In this show, we see a group of high school kids going on several adventures throughout the show and finding treasures and learning valuable lessons as they come along. And one of the main characters, sir, my mic is on.
Is the light green?
It was. It goes from green to orange.
Good way to start.
All right, should be smooth sailing from here on out, right? All right, there we are. Okay, so as I was saying, the TV show Outer Banks is on Netflix. So during this show, as the high school kids are going on adventures and learning valuable lessons, we get valuable advice from the main character, John B., throughout the show. And one of the pearls of wisdom that he drops on us is this line. Everyone you know will die. Your father, your mother, and even your best friend. Now, this is an unfortunate truth that we must come to grips with throughout our life. It is unfortunately true that we live in a broken world and everyone dies. Everyone passes away, and our life here is not eternal. Now, this is a truth that even Jesus had to deal with during his time. Well, learn in John 11 that he deals with it to a certain extent. Now, as we open up in John 11, as I said, for your Bible is from under the seats, if you're using those, we're on page 897. And we open up in John 11. Now, before we go to John 11, it's important to know we're kind of in between places. You see, at the end of John 10, Jesus did what he's best at. He made the Jews mad again, and they tried to stone him. So, he made them mad. They're trying to kill him. So he's like, all right, we got to go away for a bit. They jump across the Jordan over to where John the Baptist had been baptizing people before. So they go over there. They stay there for a bit, and that's where we open up in verse 1 of John 11. Now, as we open up in verse 1, we learn that Lazarus, a dear friend of Jesus's, is sick. Now, Lazarus, as we learn, lives in Bethany. Now, if you see here, there's a nice little red dot, makes it easy to see where Bethany is. And if you look, it's pretty close to Jerusalem. It's actually 2 miles from Bethany to Jerusalem. That's how close it is. Now, that's just for the geography nerds in the room and stuff, and that way we can know where Bethany is, because it will come as importance later on. So, from verse 1, we see Jesus with the disciples when he receives a message from Mary and Martha. Now, Mary and Martha are the sisters of Lazarus, and interesting enough, this is the same Mary that we see washing Jesus' feet in a different story in the Bible. Now, as I said, Jesus got a letter from Mary and Martha, and this letter says, "The one you love is sick." Very simple message. Very short, concise, my favorite kind of message. And Jesus knows right away that the one you love is sick means that Lazarus is sick. Unfortunately, Lazarus had become ill and was dying because of it. Now, knowing this, Jesus says, the sickness will not end in death, but is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now, getting this message and everything, you think, Jesus is going to go there right away. He wants to go see his friend, possibly even heal his friend. But Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus waits. He stays where he's at for 2 more days before deciding to go. Now, Jesus tells the disciples, okay, Lazarus is sick, we need to go back to Bethany. We need to go over to Bethany. And I kind of like to put myself in the situation in some of these Bible stories, and it's not like in the shoes of Jesus or in the shoes of one of the disciples, just kind of like a wall or a fly on the wall sort of thing. And can you imagine how the disciples were? Because they had just left and crossed the Jordan because the Jews were trying to kill him. And now Jesus is like, hey, we got to go back. I'm sure the disciples are sitting there going, do you not remember they just tried to stone us over there? Are you sure we should go back? I don't think it's safe yet. But, he tells them we need to go, and he says, Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I will go wake him. Now, the disciples reply with, well, if he's asleep, then he will get better. And I can picture Jesus here just going, no, you're not understanding. He's got to get the crayons out and the notebook and draw him a little picture of what he means here. And my little picture I get in my head there of that is confirmed in this next part where Jesus, gets out the crayons and everything, looks at the disciples and goes, Lazarus has died. Let's get that through. Let's understand that. But the next part that he explains to the disciples didn't sit well with me the first couple times I read this. I had to read through it and just, I couldn't quite understand. Because he says Lazarus has died, but he says, I'm glad I wasn't there. So now you will believe. Jesus is saying he's glad that his dear friend, possibly even his best friend, has died. Because by that happening, he knows what's going to happen. He gets the opportunity for not only the disciples to believe, but for other Jews to believe in Jesus as well. Now, the disciples are like, okay, let's go. And they travel over to Bethany. Now, Jesus before was in Perea. That's the location that it is believed that he was staying in during this time. Now, Perea is 25 miles or a 2-day walk from Bethany. So, as I said, Jesus waited 2 days before deciding to go, and then it was a 2-day journey. So that's 4 total days since he got this message. Now, when he gets there, he discovers that Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. Okay? So, 4 days, 4 days. It is likely, even probable, that Lazarus was already dead or was dying as Jesus got the message. Now, some of you may know, if you've talked to me, gotten to know me before, or some of you may not know, I am a volunteer firefighter back home. I have been since I was 15. I got a first responder training to run medical calls when I was 18. And with that, I can kind of understand what Jesus felt when he got there. He got the message. Yes, he waited, but he went and he found out that his dear friend was already passed by the time he even got notified. That is something I've had to deal with before, and there was one call comes to mind. I was at the house, and I heard the tones drop on the scanner for the ambulance. Address comes across, call comes across, CPR in progress, and I recognize the address as a location in our fire department's jurisdiction. So with the nature of the call and everything, I rush out to my truck, rush down to the station before our tones for the call even drop. And anyone that's involved in the emergency responding world knows, especially with volunteer departments, average response time is 5 minutes to even get a truck out of the station with a volunteer department, because nobody lives at the station. It takes, on average, 5 minutes for somebody to get there and get rolling. Our truck was out the door in less than a minute and a half that day. We had an above average response time to the scene. Nothing else really could have gone better. Top-notch response that day was the best we could have trained for. And we get to scene, and it is evident that the patient was deceased long before the call even came in. And that is a tough thing to grasp, that no matter how good you did, how fast you got there, there was nothing that could have changed the outcome of that day. And that's something Jesus would have had to understand as well, is that, even if he had gone as soon as he got the message, it wouldn't have made a difference. Now, when Jesus arrived, Mary stays inside and Martha comes out to greet him. Now, this isn't surprising. Mary would have been inside with the other guests, making sure there's snacks for them, making sure that they have drinks, taking care of them and being a host, which would have been customary for her role at this time. Now, when Martha comes out, she sees Jesus, comes up to him and says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Yet I know, whatever you ask of God, he will do." And Jesus then tells Martha that her brother will rise again. And Martha's like, "Yeah, I know, in the resurrection on the last day, And Jesus once again going, no, you're not quite understanding what I'm saying here. And he says, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, will live. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" Of course, Martha, believing in Jesus, being a follower of Jesus, says, "Yes, I believe this. I know this to be true." So then Jesus sends Martha back inside to retrieve Mary because he wants to talk to Mary. Now Mary comes out very much in the same manner that Martha came out. And Mary says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not be dead." Now we see Mary and Martha come out with a similar statement. Mary even in an exclamatory version of the statement. Now, both of these could be seen as accusatory or blameful to Jesus, being angry at him for not being there to heal Lazarus. I do not believe that that is the case. They were both followers of Jesus, believers of Jesus, and they knew him well. They knew that Jesus was the Son of God, and that they're saying here that, if you had been here, you would have been able to heal him, more in a wishful sentence than it is a blameful sentence. Now, when Mary came out and says this, Jesus asked to go see the tomb. He wants to see where Lazarus is buried. Now, as they're going to the tomb, Mary starts crying. And as Mary starts crying, we see in verse 35, we see he wept. We see that Jesus wept. Now, what's interesting here is in the Greek, there are two terms for Jesus' weeping. And what's interesting is, his friend has died. You would think that the terms for the grieving would be sorrow or sadness or grieving or even compassion for Mary. But that's not the case. The two terms in the Greek used for weeping here is that of anger. Both terms is anger. Jesus is angry here, angry that his friend has died because he's angry of why he died. He's angry that the sin and the broken world we live in, the sinful world, has ruined his friend, has killed his friend. And he's angry at the sin that has engulfed us all. Now, when they get to the tomb, and this is what the tomb would have looked like at the time, the stone would be rolled in front of the hole and everything would have sealed up the tomb. And Jesus says, "Open the tomb." Now, once again, let's put ourselves in, with the first responder background, but also with some, anybody that has any basic knowledge of human anatomy knows that the body starts decaying shortly after death. Now, with that comes some not so pleasant smells. Now, Lazarus' body has been in here for 4 days. With the stone rolled in front, no air getting out whatsoever. That could not have been a pleasant smell in there. Now, I can imagine Jesus says, "Open the tomb," and there's some guys in the back going, "Do you understand how that's going to smell?" Hey, go ahead. Yeah, they say he's the Son of God. Let him open the tomb. I'm going to go stand upwind. Nope, no, thank you. I don't want to smell that. I'm already I can feel lunch coming up now. I'm going to go stand back there. But they listen to Jesus. They open the tomb, and Jesus then proceeds to talk to God and then talk to Lazarus. He says, Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus comes out, wrapped in his linen straps that he would have been wrapped in before they buried him in the tomb. Now, when Lazarus comes out, Jesus says, unwrap him and let him go. And they do. They take the linen wraps off and they let him go home. Now, sidetrack for a second. I'm a very curious person, and I did some asking around school, some of the professors, and we couldn't get a for sure answer. Nobody knew. So it says he was wrapped in linen straps. They unwrapped the straps and let him go. I may be the only one that asked this, but was Lazarus naked when they unwrapped him? Did he have clothes on underneath the linen? Like, I want to know. I'm curious, because he walked through town to go back home. Was he just walking through town naked? Like, I know it happened in the Bible before. It wouldn't be that surprising, but I don't know. Now, one of our professors, Dr. Tyler Holstrom, he did a little bit of research because he couldn't answer it, and it stumped him. So he went home, did some research, came back to me, and the best we could find was some writing from Cleopatra in Egypt at the time about the customs for burial. It was possible from those writings that Lazarus would have been clothed, but we still don't know for sure. There's no guarantee, so I don't know. Just a little sidetrack to think about every time. Did he walk through town naked? I don't know. But either way, they let him go. And some of the Jews that witnessed this began to believe because of what they saw. But, you always have a few negative Nancy's in the back that don't quite believe even what they see. And you got a couple tattletale Timmies in the back that go straight to the Pharisees because of this. They're like, did you hear what Jesus did? He just healed Lazarus. Man, y'all got to stop allowing this to happen. Y'all need to get a hold on your mans. So, but what the Jews that did believe and what the disciples learned from this is that Jesus can heal even death. Even death isn't enough to stop Jesus and stop God from being able to heal. What we learn and what we take away from this is to find resurrection in Jesus. We can find our resurrection in Jesus. We can be baptized in him and find a new life. And we do have a few things that we learn along with this. One of these things we learn is Jesus has his own timing. As it's been mentioned multiple times so far, Jesus waited 4 days. He waited 2 extra days. It took 4 days to get there. But he waited 2 days after learning what happened to travel to Bethany. He could have left straight away and been there. Yeah, Lazarus would have already been dead for 2 days still by the time he got there. But he could have been there sooner. Why did he wait? If one of us found out our friend was sick, we'd take off right away to go see him. But, so why did he wait? One possible theory, it was a belief at this time that when someone passed, their soul stayed with them in their tomb for 4 days. After those 4 days, the soul would leave the body and go on. So it could be Jesus waited so that he could prove to the people of this time that he could heal even when there was not a soul. Now in verse 15, we do get a little more insight and explanation into why Jesus waited. He waited because in verse 15 he says, this is when he says that, it is so you will believe, so that you will believe in him. He waited to resurrect Lazarus so that he could do it in front of the Jews, in front of the disciples, so that they would believe in him. Now, I can't speak for everyone here, but I myself am a major deer hunter. I love deer season. I've got it circled on my calendar every year. I haven't missed an opening deer season in 13 years. Now, I don't know. I think that's impressive. I started deer hunting when I was 9 years old. Like I said, I haven't missed an opening day since. Now, I would love for a deer like that to walk out in front of me. I go out every year hoping one like this walks out. But for a lot of us that go deer hunting, you all know how it goes. We wake up early in the morning, long before the sun rises. We get dressed. We go out to the stand or to the blind, whatever you're using. And we hunt in Missouri, or a lot of us do. We hunt in the Midwest either way. Deer season's in November. November in the Midwest is very cold. And I haven't met a deer hunter yet that doesn't go out with this mentality, going, man, I hope one comes out, one like this even, that would be awesome, but comes out early, so I can get my deer, get in the truck, and go back to the house where it's warm. Because I am tired of sitting out in this cold. My favorite deer hunt story is I went out, deer walked out in front of me, I was back in the house in 15 minutes. It was phenomenal. I didn't even get my buddy heater turned on. It was great. But unfortunately, as a lot of us learn when we go out, we don't get to go out, have a fast day, and get back. We could sit there all day long, because as much as we want the deer to operate on our time, unfortunately, we operate on theirs when we're out there. This is the same with Jesus and with God. They do not operate on our time. We operate on theirs. Now, we ask Jesus for things every day. We ask him to answer our prayers, and sometimes we ask these prayers with timelines. Lord, give me that job promotion today. Lord, I'm tired of being single. Can you send me that woman to be my wife? Can you send her today? Lord, can you for the kids in the room, Lord, I want that new Xbox. Can we get it today? Can you send that to me today, please? And a lot of times we don't get it at the time we want. And we can even get angry with God because we don't get it at the time that we're desiring, the time we want, the schedule we have, the plan we have. But what we have to remember, what we have to learn from that time is that God doesn't operate to what we want, to when we want. We live by what he wants. He is all-knowing. He is all-powerful. He has a plan for us. And his plan a lot of the times is better than our plan, whether we want to believe it or not. So it's important that we accept that and follow the timing and understand that his timing is what's best for us and is what his plan for us is. Now, another piece we get here is, as he says, believe in him. Now, in verses 25 and 26, we get one of Jesus' famous I am statements. There's a couple of them throughout the Bible, and this one says, I am the resurrection and the life. He tells Mary that whoever believes in him will live on after death, and those who believe will never die. Now, obviously, he's not saying if you believe in me, you're never going to die. We see here Lazarus dies, and as John B. said at the beginning, everyone must die. Even if you believe in Jesus, you will still die. But what he's talking about is if you believe in him and you follow him, you will live on in eternity in heaven with him. Now, illustrating the belief in God, the belief that gives you eternity, was something I struggled with. And that was hard for me because if you've spent any time talking to me, I've probably either told you a personal story or referenced a movie at least once because it's my favorite thing to do. I love referencing movies. I love using personal stories. And I even have a professor at the college, our preaching professor, gets on to me because I haven't preached a sermon yet that doesn't have one movie reference in it. And he actually started Hughes. So, but I was struggling here. I could not think of one. I was stumped. And then one night, we were here at youth group, and we were talking about believe in God and believing in Christ. And one of the youth group kids brought up a movie illustration for it, one that I hadn't thought of, and it kind of shocked me because the youth group kid that brought it up was August Schonsmeyer. Now, it didn't just shock me because August brought it up. It shocked me because of the movie he used to do it and the fact that I hadn't thought of this yet. Now, the movie that August uses here is The Polar Express. Now, The Polar Express, we see the main character, which actually has a name. I watched this movie so many times, I didn't know he had a name. I really didn't. But the main character's name is Chris. Now, Chris struggles throughout the whole movie believing in Santa. They go on this trip to the North Pole. on the Polar Express. They're running through the North Pole. All the kids with him are hearing this bell. They're seeing this list. They're seeing presents. And he still won't believe. He can't hear the bell because he won't believe. Now, it's not until he's face to face with Santa and Santa rings the bell next to his ear that he finally hears it. He's finally able to believe. Now, we know we are not meant to live on this earth forever. Obviously as humans, we have a higher purpose. As believers in Christ, we have a higher purpose. And that purpose is to live with Jesus in heaven and to grow the kingdom so that we all may live in heaven. Now, for us to do this, we must believe. We must hear the bell or hear the calling of the Lord and believe in Jesus and believe in what he did for us to go to heaven. Now, it's not just something that when you get baptized, that, okay, every day. You have to choose every morning when you wake up, when you put your cowboy boots on in the morning, 1 foot at a time. You have to make that choice to believe, to follow him, and to live by his word. Yes. As mentioned before, in verse 35, when Lazarus was falling married, verse in the Bible. Verse 35 is simply just, he wept. As I said, he wept because of the sinful world that we live in, the sinful world that had made Lazarus sick and had put Lazarus in the tomb. That we was so upset about that. So what he did for Lazarus, he cries for each and every one of us. When we fall into temptations, when we fall over us, he cares about us that much that he cries for us. Now, that's how much Jesus cared for his friends. And I'd like to think, although I can't say for sure, he cares about us in this way. I've always had very caring friends. And I never quite knew how caring my friends were until November of this last November. I had a slight incident. So I had gone home. It was actually election day. I had gone home to do my due diligence as a young American over the age of 18 to go home and vote. And home as much as I'd like. My dad got off work so I could hang out with him and talk to him for a bit. And I stayed longer than I probably should have. Get a couple miles down the road. And for some reason, on this 2-lane back road, some deer decided it was a good idea to jaywalk in front of my truck. Now, as he decided to cross the road, he discovered that the front end of my truck was a very uncomfortable seat. It's kind of funny. You can kind of see, if you squint your eyes hard enough, you can see the imprint of where the deer sat in the grill. But as I called my dad, told him what happened. I'm waiting for him to come get me. And I'm sending some pictures to my friends, getting on Snapchat, sending it to them, going, hey, here's what happened. I'm going to be a little late getting back to campus tonight. And, I have caring friends. Unfortunately, none of them cared enough to ask if I was okay. I guess just sending the Snapchat was good enough for them to know I'm alive. That's all they cared about. But they cared enough that most of them, their first response was, do you need a ride? Do I need to come get you? Do you need picked up? Now, the fact that my friends cared enough that their first response was to drive an hour and a half to come pick me up meant a lot. Now, my friends are that caring, and Jesus is that caring. Jesus is that kind of friend. That'd be his first response. Well, you're alive. Do I need to come get you? He cares that much about each and every one of us that he wants to come get us. He wants to be there for us. And he will cry over us when we fail. Now, sometimes we go through stages in life. We go through times in our lives when we feel alone. Where hard times come down and we feel like everyone is turning their backs on us. Maybe we even feel like God has abandoned us. You lose your job. You're having marital issues. That family that you always dreamed of just isn't able to come to fruition. And it's hard during that time. Or maybe, you fall into sin. Maybe you even turn your back on God. Maybe it's not him, but it's you turning your back on him. You have to remember during these times that even when we fail, even when we fall short, even when everything is going against us, he is there with us. He's standing right alongside you with his hand on your shoulder, and he wants to be there for you. He's crying over you. He's praying over you, and he wants to be there to help you. But the thing I want you to remember today, if you don't remember anything else, is find resurrection in Jesus. In everything you do, find resurrection in Jesus. When you're going through the hard times in life, find resurrection in Jesus. When you get baptized, and if you've made that decision to get baptized already and you've already found new life in Jesus, remember that you made that decision. Remember it every day when you're dealing with that Karen at the Starbucks coffee shop that just can't get your order right, but she's saying it's your fault because you didn't tell her the order correctly. Find resurrection in Jesus. Be nice to her. Show her the love of Christ that he has showed you. Even when you're having a good day and everything seems to be going right, still show that resurrection in Jesus. Maybe you've got friends from your past life, back before you were a believer. Maybe you were a wild kid in high school, and one of those friends call you up and go, hey, let's go hang out tonight, let's go to the bar, let's go to the club. Remember that you have found new since that baptism, that you are a new person, that you have a new life. Find that resurrection in Jesus. Lead others to Christ. Help them find that resurrection. And, Jim asks 2 questions every week after his sermons. One of those questions is, have you been baptized? Have you made that decision? Some of you in the room, maybe you haven't made that decision yet. And if you haven't yet, I encourage you, find that resurrection in your life. Find that resurrection in Jesus. Make the decision to get baptized. As Jim says every week, and I'll just pull from him to end this out, go to the elders. Come talk to Jim. Come talk to Brendan. You can even come talk to me. We want to help you and lead you into that to find that new life in Jesus, to find that resurrection in Jesus. So I encourage you, if you haven't made that decision, do so. If you have made that decision, guide others. Be that light for others. Find that resurrection in Jesus and help others find that resurrection in Jesus. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Okay. I will pray, and then we can go. Sorry, I forgot about that part. All right. Lord, I thank you for everyone here today. I thank you that we were able to make it here even with the roads not being in perfect condition and with the unexpected snow that comes 2 days after 80-degree weather, Lord. I just thank you that we're able to gather here and to learn in your word, Lord. And I thank you for everybody here today. I pray that as they go throughout their week, Lord, that you help them and guide them to not only live in your word, but to guide others to live in your word, Lord. And I just pray that you watch over and you guide them as they go throughout their weeks and throughout their lives, Lord. It's in your Son's name I pray. Amen.